Hi, this is Denise.
Hey, this is Maggie.
Welcome to our podcast, Candor and Courage at Work.
Denise and I have known each other for a long time, a couple of decades, HR pros, and we thought it might be helpful if we got together and shared some of the things that we've learned along the way.
That's right, Maggie. Many struggle with being candid and being courageous, and we just want to use what we've learned to help you use those traits in your daily work life.
Here's hoping that makes you more successful. And here we go.
Hello and welcome. We're truly excited to welcome our very first guest, Kent Vaughn.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're really pleased that you're able to join us today. And it's a pivotal point for us here on Candor and Courage at Work because it's the first time we've invited a guest.
I guess I feel pretty honored about that. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, you're number one, Kent.
Fantastic.
Well, I just met you a few weeks ago, and but you and Maggie have known each other for much longer.
Decade.
Decades, like she and I.
Yeah. Maggie was very young then.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
So now, earlier in your time together, you were with Franklin Covey.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So, we'll dive into that a little bit more, but we want to extend our deep thanks to you for joining us because Maggie and I are both Coveyeites, as I like to say.
Yes.
And so when she shared your background, I thought, okay, this is my guy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Kent and I partnered a few times over the years, and it's really my pleasure to introduce him to our listeners. We always wanted to start with why anytime that we delve into anything. So when Denise and I recorded the last episode, it was obvious because we had both made mention of Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that we really needed to tie that into Candor and Courage at Work and speak to how that book has influenced both of us as leaders. And over the last 30 years, Kent's partnered with hundreds of organizations to improve their performance and results. He's delivered 2,000 days of strategy and execution consulting, leadership development, and process improvement initiatives. As the CEO and co-founder of both an international consulting firm and software company, Kent's leadership spans across North America, India, Asia, and Europe, where his solutions have made a global impact. He also serves as an adjunct professor at Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and in doing so is working with future leaders. And as Denise mentioned, he was previously a managing director at Franklin Covey, overseeing an annual team sales exceeding $15 million. This included working with executive teams at prominent organizations, including Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, NGK Metals, American Cast Iron Pipe, Radio Systems, Ed Financial, Covenant, and others. Before he was in financial and operational leadership roles, he was doing just that at Kimberly-Clark's flagship facilities, where he honed his expertise on large-scale operations. So, first of all, thank you again for your being here and going back a little bit further into your history. Thank you for your service in the U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's a great blessing.
You worked with Kimberly-Clark in an operational leadership role for about a decade before joining Franklin Covey, and then struck out on your own. Talk with us just a little bit about that journey.
Well, Stephen Covey obviously has written a lot of books, and I was talking to Stephen M.R. Covey, who is his oldest son, who's written the books The Speed of Trust and Smart Trust and other books. And I've known Stephen now for over 30 years, and I was talking to him one time about some things I wanted to do. I wanted to write some books, one book in particular about leadership, and he said, well, you've told me 2 important things. One, that you have something you want to say, and 2, that you're willing to say it. And I needed to kind of make a break if I was going to do that, because in the confines of Franklin Covey, they kind of have their thing. They do it a certain way, and I really wanted to focus on leadership journeys and micro-learning. And so I struck on my own to write books and create a slightly different approach to developing leaders, but built on what I learned in 24 years there.
That's awesome. So you are a critically acclaimed author of Everyone Can Lead, The 3 Keys of Execution, and the Get Clear Leadership series. We'll make those links available in the description on the podcast so that our listeners can access those. But today we really want to pick your brain and get your insights on how does all of that combined experience lend itself to how leaders practice being candid and courageous. And we're going to do this in two parts. Today, we'll really focus on candor. And then in the next episode, we'll shift our focus a bit and take a look at leaders being courageous.
Awesome.
Candor is something that I wasn't raised with, candidly, and over time, I built my candor muscle. But in what ways do you see candor in the context of leadership?
Well, it's interesting. I think about, since we were talking about Stephen Covey and 7 Habits, the fifth habit is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think that speaks to candor and courage perfectly there, right?
We agree.
We agree. Yeah, we're both nodding.
And it's the reverse order of what we tend to do. We tend to make sure they understand us, and then we might, if we have time, listen to them, right? So to me, it's really reversing the roles, which I find very helpful. But it's interesting because it's preceded by these first 3 habits where I need to have my own act together, my private victory. In my book, Everyone Can Lead, I talk about you've got to lead yourself well first. You can't expect team members to not do things you're not doing, or to do things you're not doing, or to not do things you are doing, right? So I really have to be walking the talk. And I found this as a parent that, I can't ride motorcycles if I tell my sons they can't ride motorcycles. Hence the reason I sold the last motorcycle when my oldest son was 13. Because okay, I can't tell him you can't do it if I'm still doing it, right? So I think that it's a lot easier to have candor and courage if you have your act together, if you're leading yourself well. And it's easy to be courageous because you can now ask people to do things that you are in fact doing, or ask them not to do things that you're not doing. And I think that's a huge issue that leaders face. They're just not holding themselves accountable to the level of what they hold other people accountable. I mean, it's interesting when you think about it. We judge other people by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intent. And that's the buy we as leaders often give ourselves. Well, that's not what I meant. I wasn't trying to do that and didn't mean to hurt their feelings. I didn't mean to break that, right? And so we've got to judge ourselves equally well by the actions, not the intent of our hearts and our minds, because we can't judge other people's intent either. And I think that's a real great foundation for both candor and courage.
That's a lot to unpack, but I am nodding my head the whole way because I agree with you on the premise of actions matter more than intentions. Because many of us talk away, but when we act differently is when people around us go, okay, that's who they really are, the way they behave. And so, I agree with you too. I go into discussions with people thinking about my intentions to make sure that I'm clear with them on what I want to accomplish. But ultimately, if I'm in a meeting and I'm Miss Candor, right? And I talk to people about candor, if I'm not willing to summon my courage and speak candidly in a meeting about something, then every message I've ever given about candor is completely dismissed.
That's exactly right. It reminds me of a quote that's attributed to C.S. Lewis, but if you delve deeper, it's probably really from a 10th century monk, and nobody really knows who said exactly. But this quote attributed to him is, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Right? And so we all say C.S. Lewis said, but if you really dive into it, maybe he didn't. But all of us take everything good from somewhere else, right? So he did say something like that, although it's not exactly that way in his writing. And I think candor and courage really are built on this idea of integrity. I'm doing the right things all of the time, whether people are watching or not. Because the truth is, someone is always watching. People
Correct.
are always watching, whether they're on our team or another team or a client or family member or one of our children. And so if we will act and live that way, which, by the way, don't misunderstand, I have to apologize, only about 1 million times a week, right? Because we fail at this, but having this continued focus on that I'm going to do the right thing. And sometimes that means I'm going to say hard things to people in a way that's appropriate, and also be willing to accept those hard things as well. And one of your previous podcasts, you talked about someone giving you some advice, but it was public, and it would have been much better if it had been in private, right? It could have been handled much better. And that's really, it's the right place, the right time, because just because it's the right thing to say, it may not be the right time to say it.
Correct.
Or the right way to say it.
Yeah, I talk a lot about being in the right headspace, taking emotion out of it, because we make our worst mistakes when we're emotional.
Oh, if we are angry or we are frustrated, you never win an argument with that.
Mhm.
It never works, and as if we're trying to win an argument, right? We never move the process forward when we act in haste or in frustration and anger. Although, gee, I'm guilty of doing that, and I used to joke the reason I taught Seven Habits so much was because I needed it more than anybody, right?
That's why it resonated so much with me. I'm
was
not going
gonna
to
say,
speak for
I
Maggie.
keep going back to it. I keep
Yes,
going back
yeah.
to it
Yeah.
for that very reason,
Mhm.
because it is those lessons along the way where I'm like, oh, that didn't go the way that I wanted it to.
Right.
And why not?
Yeah.
Where can I turn to get some reinforcements on that?
And
So,
it didn't work well. And now I've got to spend time doing damage repair rather than progressing on the solution. So,
Well, one of the things I'd like to say about that, I love what you said there, that if it didn't work well, damage repair. But this is like, the age-old fish is never good after 3 days, maybe company as well. So the sooner we can go back and say, I didn't do that well, and I apologize, and here's what I'm going to do differently next time. Then people go, oh, maybe he really means that, right? If you really apologized, and this is certainly a great way when we make a mistake with anything at work. Tell your boss, I made a mistake. Don't gloss over it. Tell them what you really did. What did you learn, and what are you going to do differently? If we will act in those ways, when we then give people power to do it themselves. Oh, he admitted he was wrong. He came and apologized. He came whatever.
which is the key to growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for all of us. And you were talking earlier, Kent, about everybody watching, or somebody's always watching.
Mm-hmm.
One of the litmus tests that I give folks is you're going to know you've done the right thing if you like who you see in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth before you go to bed at night.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so even if there isn't really somebody else watching, the true test of the leader is the actions. And ultimately, it comes back to yourself.
Absolutely. It's that old poem about the man in the mirror, right? If you can't look at the man in the mirror and feel good about who you are, then, or woman in the mirror, right? You're never going to have the emotional intelligence and comfort that you can talk to people about issues or concerns they have, and you never really develop. You always feel a little bit like I'm a little bit of a fraud.
I was going to say imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
Yeah. And not feeling like you're really living up to the responsibilities as a leader in providing that candid feedback.
Absolutely.
And I love it too, because it ultimately, all of what we do as leaders, hopefully, is centered around building trust and maintaining trust.
Right.
And the ability to step before people and say, I have made a mistake. I am sorry. And here's what I'm going to do differently goes back to your earlier point of setting the example and being the right, living right, or working right, acting right, so that the people around you who are watching and listening will model your behavior and give us all more of what we desire. But let me ask you, because I think everybody has specific challenges with being candid with people.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, I talked to somebody more recently who has a challenge with being overly candid with people.
yeah.
So
Uh-oh.
that's a future episode.
Mm.
But what are some of the common challenges or obstacles that you've seen either yourself or through others? Would you share with us what those are?
One of them I still deal with it often is the assumption they'll get better on their own.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll figure this out. They're bright people. They're hardworking people. They'll figure this out. And sometimes we have myopia, right? We have myopia, whatever that's called, blind spots, right? So sometimes people literally have blind spots that they don't know. And, in the Deep South, we sometimes say their mama didn't teach them. It may not be their mama didn't teach them. It may be they just don't remember or didn't use it or missed it entirely. So, give people grace, a lot of grace, but then be willing to have the conversation about, hey, we've talked about this and this, or we haven't talked about that. Let's figure out what's going on. And it's like any difficult conversation. You lay out the facts, but only the facts and unemotional facts, right? And never with the definitive, you always, you never, I can't believe, right? But just, hey, there's a couple things going on. Like talked about how we solve that. I want your input. Here's a couple of facts as I see them, now tell me what's really going on, because I know you're seeing things or hearing things that I'm not seeing. And so if we will be very abundant and open, Stephen certainly said that a lot, abundant, open to, they are experiencing some facts that we don't know about. And that's always the case. It's not that it's once in a while the case. It's always the case. So if we go into a conversation with the one or two facts and not the definitive you always, you never, I can't believe, right? But just say, there's a couple things going on. I'm concerned about it. Tell me about it. And if we go in completely unemotional, they will be usually very willing to share. Now, maybe not initially if they're a new person, new employee, new on our team, they're like, well, I don't know, is this the way that kind of, back end and really kind of take me out the knees later?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I got you. Is this a gotcha? Where I'm going to tell all the story, and then and it's going to be a gotcha. So sometimes you have to earn that trust,
Mm-hmm.
because just because someone walks in doesn't mean they're going to trust you, because they may have plenty of times where they have lost trust. And frankly, I'm the guy. That was funny. I was on the phone on a Zoom call last night with a Mercedes-Benz leader in China who's moving to one of the Mercedes-Benz plants in the U.S. that I work with, and he was talking about that his approach is, I give you trust, 100% trust, until you lose it. And that's my MO as well. In fact, Lincoln said, it's better to trust people and be disappointed every once in a while than to distrust people being unhappy all the time, right? So I am the trust guy. I'll trust you until you show me I can't. But sometimes I don't go back and circle back and say, hey, you did this thing, and now I've kind of lost trust with you. Especially if it's someone really close to you or a business partner. I've never had that happen before. Where you're like, Dad, blast it, really?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and I go back to also in, what we've talked about in prior episodes is the pre-work that needs to be done before having these difficult conversations aligns with what you just said. It's building relationships,
Right.
And being able, I invoked the emotional bank account
Right.
in that process of we need to establish that trust over time. So you just can't come right out of the gate and say, let me be candid with you and not be able to predict how the person receiving the candor is going to react to it.
Exactly.
So what would you say to a new leader that's coming aboard about being candid or providing feedback? How would you coach them in that process?
What I would start them with is ask for feedback. Ask for feedback. It's, feedback's kind of the breakfast of champions, right? So asking for feedback, and then acting on it is really doing something about it. So I think asking people and talking to people about, hey, I want to get better. I'm not done by any stretch of the imagination, so I want to get better. So I'm going to ask you. I had a leader many years ago, my first job at Kimberly-Clark, that every Friday for 6 months met with me and another girl who started at the same time as I did. So he met with us separately. But every week he would ask us, how'd it go this week? What'd you learn? How can I help you? How can I help you? And that was incredibly valuable because I'd never had a boss like that before who was every single Friday having this conversation every single week. And it was always, how can I help you? How can I help you? Well, fascinatingly enough, it became a job that I hated. It was a job that I, on Sunday evenings, would actually almost get ill thinking about going to work. But I stayed because of him and a newborn baby and a wife, right?
Yeah.
But I stayed. But finally, after a couple of years of this job that I just couldn't stand. People were great. I didn't like the work. I finally went to him and said, I got to tell you, I need help with. But he'd earned that because of what he did for the first 6 months. Otherwise, I probably would have just walked out. And they ultimately end up moving into a great operations role at Kimberly-Clark that I loved and had a lot of fun with and had some great leaders that I got to work with. So, but because he had taken the time with me on the front end, so that's I think the other side of it, getting to know your people. There's a great book about this called The Best Damn Ship in the Navy by Abrashoff, and he talks about taking over the worst ship in the Navy and these one-on-ones he had with every sailor on the ship, and there were hundreds of them.
I've read that.
And
Yep.
It's such a great book.
Yes.
About how to actually do this. So when people say, what books did you read? Well, there's a bunch of them, but if I'm a new leader and I'm trying to figure out how to do one-on-ones, he does it as well as anybody I've ever seen. But just walking through what he did and getting to know his sailors and all the things he did. And I so recommend that. Ask for feedback and get to know them on a personal level, what's important to them, what do they care about. Because some people work for you because they want to make a lot of money. Some people want to work for you because they want to pay for their ski boat. Who cares? I don't care.
Yeah.
But the more I know that, the more I can maybe build on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And ultimately, what you spoke to in that story about Kimberly-Clark is the reason we stay is the leader,
Exactly.
not the company.
Absolutely.
And that is so powerful for all of us as leaders to remember when we're dealing with our people.
Well, the data, by the way, I started to jump in, but the data is so clear. I mean, study after study done by every renowned organization you can imagine is that people don't leave companies, they leave their leader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they might stay because of the company in spite of a bad leader. They don't stay long term, and they certainly don't bring their best every day. They don't bring their A game to work for a bad leader.
That's correct.
Kent, thank you for being with us today. Would you please share with your listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. If you go to our website, or one of the websites, the easiest one is blazeperformance.io. And that's where you can go learn about our consulting and our tech tools, et cetera. And clearperformance.com is our coaching company. So we have 3 different companies that do things, but you can go there. Several of our books are available on Amazon. So, go there and reach out. Let us know how we can help.
Quality products and books. I've perused them myself, so everybody would be well served to go visit the websites and check out Kent's offerings.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today for Candor and Courage at Work.
We hope you found some inspiration and encouragement in today's episode.
For more information or to connect with us, visit our website, candorandcourageatwork.com, and be sure to download future episodes wherever you listen.